Welcome, everyone. We're happy you can join us today for our wonderful IPF case study panel discussion featuring the creators behind Miikshi The Sheep and Get Up Aisha. Before we begin, I would like to introduce myself. I'm the program manager. My name is Hannah Johannes at the sorry, the Real World Film Festival, and I'm happy that you can join us today. Before we begin, we would like to do a land acknowledgement to honor the land with which we stand on. We acknowledge the land we are meeting on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home and has always been to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. We would also like to thank our sponsors, IPF, for partnering with Real World Film Festival and championing and supporting our filmmakers for making this panel happen. To purchase your tickets, please visit www.realworld.ca. We'd also have a few housekeeping tips. Please remember that this is a safe, non-judgmental digital space, and we recommend that you ask questions at the end of the panel session. Without further ado, I would like to introduce to you the team behind Get Up Aisha and the team behind Miikshi The Sheep and our wonderful moderator, Mark Chaplin from the Independent Production Fund. Take it away.
Hey.
Welcome.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today for today's two-way interview between Miikshi The Meek Sheep creators, Lindsay and Justin Lee, and Rabiya and Marushka of Get Up Aisha. We're going to kick things off with a presentation that I'm going to do about the IPF's development packaging program, which actually all four of our panelists today have gone through. And so after you hear me talk about our program, you'll hear them go through firsthand experience of what it was like to both develop and produce a short form series. So hopefully that will give you the tools necessary to create a successful application in the future. And please, throughout the broadcast, you can leave your questions for the panelists or myself in the YouTube chat. And at the end of the program, I'll be moderating questions between everyone. All right, so I will begin the presentation. Great. So yes, I'm Mark from the Independent Production Fund. I'm the program coordinator for the fund. I just wanted to get started with our contact info just at the top, so people have an opportunity to write down our email if they need to get in touch later on, just so it's not so rushed at the end. You can also follow us at the IPF on Twitter, where we announce all the newest updates to our programs when the application portals open. And we give updates on events like this, other events we sponsor that we're participating in, and how our series do and launch, and where you can check them out. There's only three of us actually in the Toronto office. It's really small. So there's John Taylor, who's the CEO that began in 2020, Carly McGowan, who is our program manager, and she's been at the IPF for over a decade, and me, and I've been there since 2018. So when you write to info@ipf.ca, it's not kind of a void inbox. It will go to one of the three of us, and we will be able to answer pretty quickly, a pretty quick turnaround time if you have any questions. So we try to make it as accessible as possible, and email really is the best way to get in touch with us. So what do we do? I can't poll you guys at the moment to see what your familiarity with the fund is, but we support Canadian creators, writers, and producers by providing development and production financing for digital first and television series. So we run a number of different programs that producers apply to make and develop their projects. So we have four main funding programs. Today, we're just going to focus on two in my presentation, which is our short form digital series development packaging program, and subsequently our short form digital series production program. We also do have a TV production program, and we offer professional development grants for industry events like Real World. I won't be getting into those programs today, but if you have separate questions about those, you can always email us. So first, I'm going to kick it off kind of in chronological order of how you would apply to the IPF. So that begins with our development packaging program. It's designed to assist independent producers to create high quality original scripted short form series. The funds that you receive are used to help development of strong creative materials, encourage the incubation of new talent. We also encourage the participation of experienced professionals or production companies that want to try something new, experiment, maybe work with a new and emerging creator on a project that maybe doesn't have the broadcast support of a traditional broadcaster, but try something new. And hopefully successful projects will be in a better position to attract partners, financing, distribution, and move successfully into production moving forward. So that's kind of the goal of the program. So at the beginning, I also want to give you just some eligibility, basic eligibility requirements for our program and when you can apply for our next deadline. So the next deadline is March 1st, 2022. Usually projects around this late fall time and early into 2022, the new year, are when teams start collaborating, working together, developing their project, and preparing their application to apply. So this is kind of a perfect time to give this presentation. So what's eligible? So short form series we define as episodes that are less than 20 minutes. It can be as many episodes as you want. And that's to differentiate it from a 22-minute episode or a half-hour series on broadcast. It must be scripted. But any genre is eligible. So drama, comedy, sci-fi, horror, romance, action, puppeteering, animation, as we'll get into later, are also eligible. It just can't be nonfiction or documentary. Anthology series are also permitted for the program. And the focus is on new and original creative concepts. Other eligibility criteria, you must have a Canadian production company, and a Canadian writer must be attached to the series. So we really do support and promote Canadian creators. So that's why that is our criteria. So as I mentioned, series with episodes running over 20 minutes are not eligible, as are nonfiction series. Unfortunately, subsequent series are not eligible for the program. As I mentioned, new and original is the focus. There's also IP related issues with venturing into development of subsequent seasons. Projects that are not targeting digital platforms first, so like traditional broadcasters, and also projects that have applied for production funding previously, which means that if you've already applied for production funding, it probably means that you're too far along in the process to develop the project. The project is already developed and you're looking to produce it. So that would not be eligible for our program. So what do you need to apply? The first thing is a team. So you need a Canadian writer with previous credited experiences as a producer or writer on scripted episodic series. You also need a producer. And thirdly, you need a mentor. So either an experienced story editor or a development executive. So to break this down a little further, how it works is the producer and the writer could be the same person. And in that case, they need previous experience either writing or producing a scripted episodic series, but it could also include short films, short form series, feature films, kind of anything is on the table, but it has to be scripted. And you just need at least one credit to be eligible to apply. Additionally, it could be a separate writer and a separate producer who focus on different things and they come together to apply. That's great as well. And then finally, we need somebody, since our program is directed towards new and emerging creators, as I'll get into in a bit, you will have money to pay a story editor or development executive. We really encourage you to go big with that choice. Hire somebody who's really great for the project, that will be able to give you notes on the scripts as you write them, and any other sort of guidance as you move forward. You can define the role, you can define their responsibilities, but we really hope that this will improve the experience of developing your project. Yeah, and on the other side, you can also hire a development executive who will help you with pitching, the business side of producing, so creating budgets, putting financing structures together, working with tax credits, getting you in the room with the right people. So that's how you kind of build your team and would be eligible to apply for our program. The second thing is the creative pitch. So we have a strict maximum of 3 pages. Our programs are often oversubscribed. And so 3 pages is really the maximum of what our evaluators can handle, given the amount of applications that we receive. So that should include a complete synopsis of the series, a story arc over the course of the season, a description of lead characters, and the format of a typical episode. So fit whatever you want in there. Try to make it as compelled into a new world and the characters as you can. I'll get more into the evaluation and how those are looked at later on. Yeah, and feel free to add graphics, design it. I've also seen lots of applications that come just with text, and those are okay too. However best you want to sell those 3 pages to our evaluators. The third thing is a 1-page vision document, which we added in 2021 because we got a lot of comments in 2020 that 3 pages was not enough space to fully describe the project to the evaluators. And so we realized we couldn't really add another page of creative, but we gave the opportunity for creators to submit a vision document. So it's separate to the creative. We want the creator to sell their short form series beyond the 3-page creative document. We want to know, why does it need to be made? What drives you to create it? Sell us on your passion, what the urgency of creating it is, and try to get us through the heart, sell us on your project that way. So that's another required document when you apply. Additional required documents are kind of typical of other development funds. So you would need a development budget, a development schedule, and a list of previous development phases, if any. So if you've developed parts of your project prior, we want to know about it. We want to know what you've gone through to get to this point and how you will be using our financing for the next stage of development. And the development schedule, I will also get into what the timeline is for that in a little bit. So if you apply and you're successful, the maximum development funding available for each project is $30,000. The funding will be in the form of a repayable advance to be paid back upon the first day of principal photography. If you don't go into production, that's okay. You will not owe us the $30,000. It is only if you go into production, and the funds will then be recycled into the program to support future development projects. Yeah, and as a financer and a partner, the IPF will participate financially through a percentage of the profits made from the series, subsidiary rights, or subsequent works. But that's a little much detail for this presentation, and will be clearly communicated if you receive the financing and when we go to contract. So what are the eligible expenses? What can you use the $30,000 for? Well, you're required to create a demo, which we'll see in a bit with Get Up Aisha, what they were able to create on that budget. A proof of concept or trailer. There's no maximum or minimum length. We really want you use the money in any fashion that makes the most sense to you, that you think will attract digital platforms, distributors, buyers, etc. 3 episode scripts are required. You can, if you have the financing to pay your writer to write more than 3, that's great, but 3 are required for our program. And then finally, an updated synopsis of the series. So we want to know what has developed since your initial application. We don't need a full Bible, but again, it's how you use the resources at your disposal to create the best packaging possible. So the timeline, as I mentioned, the deadline for applications is March 1st. The decisions for the program are announced in mid-April, so about a month and a half later. And then shortly after that, we try to go to do contract as quickly as possible, so you're able to receive the development funds and get started on your project as quickly as possible. And then all development activities must be completed by September 30th of that year. So you have from mid-April to September 30th to complete all of those deliverables, as I just mentioned. And And that will help you build your development schedule, which is a required document. And then the deadline for production financing is October 1st. So it's the next day. And it will be all the same materials that you submitted to us in the development phase. You'll use them to apply for production financing the next day. And then the production financing decisions are announced in mid-November. So again, about a month and a half of a wait until you find out if you've received production financing. So that brings us into the production program for short form digital series. So the main thing here is that only projects who have been through our development packaging program are eligible to apply for production financing. So you won't be competing with a whole bunch of other series that are applying to us. It will be only the projects that go through the development program. And the maximum you can apply to us for is $200,000. The funds are issued as a form of equity investment in the project, as opposed to a repayable advance. So we do take a stake in the project. And again, the financing that is recouped on the project will be recycled into the program moving forward to support future projects. So this is a full list of application requirements for our production program. So I've mentioned a lot of them already. This also includes, though, audience analytics of how your trailer that you create does. So you can release it online. You can put it up on YouTube and do marketing and promotion around it to get people engaged. And we want to know, how does that help you making the project moving forward? What kind of comments are you receiving? What kind of feedback are you getting? So you'll have to submit a document to us like that. Or you can create a small group of people that give really detailed feedback. You can pay them, or maybe it's on a volunteer basis. You can kind of do a target group, maybe of your demographic or across different demographics, to see where it hits the best. So it doesn't have to be online. Views are not the only thing we look at. Absolutely, it's the feedback that you receive and how you use it to go into production of your project. You'll also need a production budget, a preliminary financing plan, a production schedule, a list of the performers and other key creative positions that you've locked, and a list of targeted distributors, platforms, channels, etc. So we want to know, if you haven't secured anybody by this point, who do you plan to pitch to? Who do you think would be a good partner for your series, or what would be a good platform for your show to live on? We kind of want to know that you're thinking about it, and that you have plans moving forward of how you're going to target those. And then a final cost report of how the development funds were spent. So as I mentioned, the deadline for production financing is October 1st. So we just had our deadline 20 days ago, and so we're in the midst of evaluating the projects, which brings me to the evaluation process. What are the evaluators looking for? This is a big question that we get pretty often. People want to know how do you make a good application? How do you make yours stand out amongst so many applications that you receive? So the story, the characters, the creative as a whole is really what our evaluators look at first. We want to be hooked. We want to hear a new story. We want to see something we've never seen before, or a familiar story from a new point of view. And then secondly, we want to be gripped by your characters. We want to feel invested in their journey. The world may be great, but if we're not along with the characters, then it's harder to get on board. So that's kind of what you really want to focus on. The second thing is the team. As I mentioned earlier, we want you to really go big. There is a little bit of money. You won't be hiring somebody for free or in-kind support. You will be able to pay them. So hopefully that makes it a little more real for them. And it can obviously be contingent if you receive the development financing. And then also, we really want this person to help you improve your project, to be guidance or just give notes, not overbearing, but just what you need them to be. And then finally, your passion, which comes through in the vision document. Pitch it, improve it. Why now? Why does this show feel urgent to be made? We really want to know. So who are the evaluators? So for the development portion, the development packaging program, the evaluators are made up of Canadian industry professionals, IPF board members, graduate level film students, which are potentially in the demographic of where you might want to be hitting. Not always, but sometimes. And members of the IPF staff. So there's going to be at least 4 to 5 evaluators per looking at each project, and we aggregate the scores. We talk about it with the evaluators. So those are who is looking at those. And then for the production program, it is really Canadian industry professionals that we hire to look at the projects again and again. It'll be multiple people looking at each application. And I kind of have already been over what they look at. Yeah, we also do look at the budget and obviously the potential for success, but those are kind of lower down in the evaluation scores. But we do look to make sure that you're thinking about how the development financing will be used, that it makes sense, and that you have a plan moving forward with your project. So again, I'll put up our contact info. That's it there. Feel free again to put any questions you have about my presentation in the chat. We'll try to get to them at the end. And if not, you can always follow up at info@ipf.ca. So that's it for me. I am so excited to get to our two-way interview with creators who have been through our development packaging program in the past. And we're going to kick it off with the Get Up Aisha trailer. This project came through our program in 2020, received development financing and production financing, and they're currently in the midst of preparing to go into production now. So yeah, I will let the trailer show you that.
Come on. Thesis proposal, 30 seconds. Go.
I don't have a topic for my thesis yet.
Have the proposal for that thesis in my inbox first thing Friday.
From the outside looking in, it seems like I've got it all. The cool cat Pakistani mom who doesn't add a lychee to biryani. The super kind, super ripped boyfriend. And friends who are always there for you, even when you don't want them to be. And that's my life. So, how did I get here?
Aisha, get up! Get up!
Aisha, I think you're suffering from clinical depression and an anxiety disorder.
Okay, cool. How do I fix it?
Well, there's lots of things we can do to combat it.
Yeah. I got this. So I'm gonna identify the 6 most effective ways to cure depression. Like photolight therapy.
Something burning?
Making new friends. Exercise. That's known to release the happy chemicals. And other things that are supposed to help. And that's it. That's what I'm gonna do to kick depression's ass. What do you think? Best thesis ever?
Godspeed, hotshot.
Can we start by talking about how beautiful your trailer is?
It looks so nice. Like the production value is just beautiful.
The sound design, the photography,
the
performances,
yeah.
It just has a really got so much polish to it. And the ending's really funny. I mean, so like we just wanted to start there.
Very kind. Yeah, very kind.
This was something that was important to you guys as well.
Yeah, I think very much so. Like, I think going into the development phase with like the 30K, I think we had a discussion, and it was like the vast majority of that money was going to kind of go up on screen to make the trailer as polished as possible. Now.
Yeah, totally. No, we're so excited to talk to you guys just because you've been through development and production under the new IPF program. So yeah, why don't we start by just chatting about the development process? So you guys obviously you had the idea, you came to the IPF. How did you go about finding, like, putting your team together? So who was your development executive or story editor, and how did you find them?
Well, that is a great question. So maybe we can actually just talk about how like the three of us came together. So myself, Marushka, and then Nisha, who can't be here because she's living her dream on Murdoch Mysteries. So the three of us are actually in a writing group together with three other fabulous folks. And this deadline was coming up and we thought we'd just kind of like go for it. And we tried to like leverage our different relationships to fill the rest of our team out that we needed. I think for the year we applied, you needed both a story editor and a development exec. Or Marushka, do you remember? Was it both that was required or only one?
No, it was either or.
It was either or. Okay, yeah. Do you want to talk about how we brought other people onto the team? Yeah.
So I had a prior connection with Lisa Balin from Authentic, who did Save Me, The Guildstone, like a bunch of other like digital series. And I just asked her, hey, do you want to put your name on this? And she was like, yay. So that's exactly how it happened. Yeah, we didn't really think a lot of things through. Like we had like, I think a week or 10 days, we were like, are we doing this? And then we just decided to like go from there. That's when we wrote, got everyone on board. Rabs had another great connection with, I'll let her talk about that. And then,
so the third person that was kind of missing from our team was the producer. I luckily had this like mentor, Mary Brendan, who was very kind to just be like, yeah, like I'll sign on. She comes from like an animation background. She's done a lot of great things, but she was also willing to just kind of lend us her name so we could get the development money. Yeah.
I mean, I guess that speaks a lot to the importance of networking and meeting people and kind of fostering relationships in this industry, which is certainly not always the easiest thing to do, not a trivial thing to do, but obviously very important because you had these people, these great people to kind of jump on your project or endorse it, or
and specifically like-minded people.
Yeah,
you know, like
absolutely.
people you've worked with before. Yeah, because you three, you were in a writing group. So for the demo, then, so once you submitted your application, you got the funding. So now it's time to write 3 scripts and make a demo. What was your writing process like for those 3 scripts?
So I think, in all honesty, our development process was like very heavy on focusing on the trailer and getting that like totally like ready and polished. And then it was a bit of a sprint to the finish with the rest of the deliverables and writing the scripts and such. We got like great notes from our development executive, who later transitioned to be our executive producer, Lisa Balin, to kind of help expedite the process. But yeah.
I mean, that sprint to the finish thing sounds like the quintessential creator's life. It's like always, it's like, oh my god, we have 3 more scripts or whatever.
You get so ambitious about it, and you're like, we can do this and this and this and this.
Yes.
Like, weeks left.
Yeah.
100%.
It's always, and it's a good struggle to have, I think, because as we just saw on screen, like that's what came out of you guys going, let's really make this, and that makes so much sense because that's part of the tool you're using to sell this show, to like make people get it. And it's kind of hard to get it if you can't really see what it could be. So that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, were there things about the story, so about the overall concept, you know, Aisha having this sort of like idyllic life on the surface, but then she has these underlying mental health issues. Were there things about the story that were sort of unmovable from day one, or did things change throughout the process of development?
I would say very less changed, right? Like I think like Nisha like had the nugget and she came to us, and then that's literally where we took it from. I don't think much changed in terms of the arc. Like we knew we wanted to hit certain themes, that Aisha was a Pakistani woman. We wanted to show depictions of like Islam on screen that you know that we haven't seen before. We were very clear with the themes. I think most of what changed was like the number of like episodes and like, you know, and I think our biggest debate was how old do we want Aisha to be? Should she be in high school? Should she be in like university? And I think that's our only debate. I think everything else was pretty much firm from day one, and we just ran with it. Yeah.
There were a couple of like additions that didn't really impact like the story arc or the themes we were exploring, but it was more to add like stakes to the story and more dynamic characters. So the professor character that you just saw in the trailer was a bit of a later addition once we started developing the show. And then also the idea of her like doing a thesis around and testing the ideas for what could help her depression was also like a later addition, just to help like firm up the storyline more than anything. Yeah.
I mean, I think it works both, I guess, in the broader sense for the series and also just for the trailer, because it's a nice framework to bookend the thing with that thesis with the professor, with this kind of like, it's like a school assignment that she has to do, but it's also a life thing.
There's like a checklist she's going through, which is a really clear way to follow that story and that character arc.
Something that a lot of people can relate to, having to do that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And yeah, like the demo. So I know for the development packaging program, you know, the guidelines were create a demo that you're going to put up online, you're going to get audience feedback on. So, and we know this too from our experience, it's hard to condense an idea into a trailer because you're like, what do I include in this trailer? So what was your process? Did you storyboard first? Did you kind of write a script first? Like, how did the demo come together?
Yeah, okay. So I will say, like, scripting a demo is like a bit of it's a nightmare. It's a painful process, like, because it's like you're trying to like reverse engineer it and trying to make it like dynamic and interesting enough that it still feels like a trailer. And so what essentially happened was we would just like write scripts of a trailer. Like we started off with the three of us each writing like individual scripts and then trying to like Frankenstein them together in terms of what we thought like worked best and like hit like all the story beats we needed to. And then we'd also get feedback from our executive producer. But I honestly feel like that was all great prep work, but I definitely feel like once we got to the editing stage, that's really when it all kind of like came together. I feel like even the script, even though the script itself was like good and like strong, like so much of it ended up like on the cutting room floor, or like we were we redid like some of the voiceover, you know. So I think it's just like it's an ever evolving process, is what it felt like. What do you think, Marushka?
Yeah, I was gonna be like #ADR because that. Like how long did we spend? I think editing. I think it was like 2.5 months, and like the first cut to the end, they're like completely different shows. Right. So like it was like a real process to like chop up everything and then and then find music that fit. And me and the editor, who was also our director, honourable were there like every day, morning to like night, like, you know, trying to figure it out.
Yeah. Oh, and I just want to give a quick shout out to some more of Marushka's connections, because Marushka's previous background is like in the music world, and so she pulled some connections to get us the awesome music for the trailer.
I was going to just compliment the audio work in general, including the music, actually particularly the music. Yeah, so that obviously added a lot to the polish of the piece. So
yeah,
good shout out, and actually a good place to put focus. But no, as a sidebar, it is really interesting how you can, what do they say? Like you write the thing 3 times, whether it's a trailer or an episode or whatever. It's like you write it and then you shoot it and you're kind of, it's like a little different. And then you go to cut it and it's a little different.
Mm-hmm.
As you said, it's in this case different between the first and last cut. So,
yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And then the hard part comes, you know, you're done the demo, it's online. Now, how are you going to find an audience?
Mm-hmm.
So how did you do that? Like, what was your process for getting the feedback and the analytics that you needed?
So we're lucky that the third member of our team, Nisha, actually comes from like a social media manager like background, which was invaluable. And so she really kind of took the charge in terms of like setting up like our Instagram account and making sure that like, you know, it was Yeah, and like engaging. And then she actually put the trailer or the first minute of the trailer up on like TikTok, which like a great number of our like overall views like came from as well. And we also put it up on like Reddit and a couple of different like targeted subreddits. And I think just through that and then sharing it in our personal like social media channels, like we were just starting to get a lot of like great feedback. It's like, oh, like this is relatable, or like this feels like you're telling the story of my life and stuff like that. And when it came to like the deliverables and applying for production funding, we actually ended up like screenshotting a bunch of those comments and like putting it throughout like our pitch package to be like, hey, like this is a show that people like really wanna see. So I think that that helped us. Yeah.
We also had like fan art, like someone drew like that portrait of Aisha with the headphones on, and it was like gorgeous. Mm-hmm. And then someone like made their own depression checklist, and that spun other people to make their own depression checklist, which we then like, you know, took for our own like marketing stuff for the production part, and we included it in our analytics. So a lot of it was very user generated. Like, you know, I wish we could take the credit for it, but we can't.
Yeah.
The audience themselves. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you get the credit for where it started, like that kickoff, and then people are riffing on it, and that's awesome. I think it's so cool when you just have an idea like this checklist thing, you put it into the script, you shoot it, and then people do things with it and affects them. That's fantastic.
That's amazing.
And I think it also speaks so much to, I mean, a discussion that's very much happening right now about representation and, you know, having a content that people can really relate to, and as you said, see themselves in.
I think it's so
important.
Especially like BIPOC content,
Mm-hmm.
you know, like hearing from people who it's maybe their first time seeing themselves represented on screen.
Mm-hmm.
I know, for us, like that's been a really rewarding process. It's like, because I mean, when you think about it, there just isn't a lot like this, especially from a mental health perspective.
Especially,
so that's the originality is amazing. Actually, I'm just seeing we had a question from an audience member asking you guys. It's a very good question. What was the biggest challenge you faced in putting together the whole development package for funding?
Marushka, do you want to start?
I don't know. Okay, I think I could speak to this, and I think we touched on it a little bit earlier about how networking is really important, and I think that for us it was basically trying to wrangle and like get all of those connections together. Writing, like, I think because we were 3 creators, like I think it was easier to get the creative materials done because we could just like, you know, section those off and have each of us do certain parts. So that was helpful. But I think for us, the most difficult part for development especially was, just getting the team members together. And I would say that was our biggest challenge. I don't know if you agree.
No, I definitely agree. And I think that is maybe a challenge that a lot of other like first-time creators like face as well, in terms of just like finding people that they can go to when they, like, for example, like want to apply to something and they need like someone who's more experienced like attached to the project. Because I think it's really challenging when you're like new to the industry and you don't have those connections. And luckily, like I know especially on the like the BIPOC side, there's a lot of like databases that are starting, like Access Real World is a great one. There's like Film and Color, Hire BIPOC, things like that. And there are producers who are like on there and like looking for like new and exciting content. Because I do think for creatives, like finding a producer especially can feel daunting, because you're like, I just want a producer so my project can move forward. And sometimes it's like you have no idea like where to look. But I think those are like a really good starting point. And I will say that this is also something that maybe I think the funders are starting to think about more and more, is about like if they are like supporting like emerging creators, how can they do that in a way that really is supporting emerging creators versus like giving funding to larger production companies that have got, this is like their 3rd, 4th, 5th time getting it. Because I think that was something that really helped us. Like I don't think we would have gotten the money if like like Authentic wasn't attached to our project like from the get-go, because we were basically like 3 no-name creators like before this, and I think that's just like an ongoing conversation with the funders, especially about supporting emerging creators as much as possible.
Absolutely. fostering those relationships is obviously, as you said, it's extremely difficult, can be extremely difficult. And I think on a broader sense, finding, what do they say? Good help is hard to find. It's like, it's true. It's like finding good people to collaborate with. You guys have the three of you to like collaborate with each other, which is already an amazing find. And, you know, I'm sure you'll continue to maybe make other things in the future together and collaborate and whatever. And that's the thing, is like when you find those people, you're like, we just need to keep working together, because it is so hard to like-minded people that are going to come through, that are going to work. So,
yeah. So speaking of working together, so you finished your development package, you're now moving on to production. So was any of the audience feedback or anything you discovered in development, even, you know, like budget changes or whatever, did that affect your application for production, those specific things discovered in development?
That's a really good question. I think like the vast majority of the audience feedback we got was really positive, and just helped us like affirm that like we were like on the right track in terms of like the creative. And I think some of the feedback that was maybe more like constructive in nature, I think we kind of sat down and we like discussed it, and ultimately we realized like, you know, you can't please everyone with anything you create. Like sometimes it's just like not meant for like a specific segment of the population, and that's totally fine. And we just kind of made peace with that. But I think during the development process, like I think even before the development process, like our understanding of like budget was very like loosey-goosey. Like I think we had originally budgeted like $5,000 for our trailer, and then we had like all these other like fees for like the 30,000. And then once we actually like sat down and made like a real budget for what it would cost, we realized like when you have like an idea, it's like the budgetary considerations like need to come after that, because it's like you could have like, you know, some like pyrotechnics we wanted in like one episode, and it's just like, okay, you could do that, but it's gonna cost you. And so I think just like being way more cognizant of that and realizing like the budgetary constraints of what we could actually do with a short form series was definitely something that came to light much more like during the development process. And we tried to be like cognizant of that, but make sure that we were still like telling the kind of story like we want to tell. Marushka, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that too. And then realizing that people, like, I think we kept it within the three of us for so long. And then, like, you know, once our DOP, Aisha, came in, once our director came in, it also then becomes theirs and their inputs. And like, and Sana, who played Aisha, like, it just like evolves and becomes other people's. And I think that that's what, like, you know, changed from like development to like production, is that now it's everyone's project in a way, like, that they bought into it. And I think that that was one of the things I would say that changed for me anyways.
Yeah, so you received the production financing, which is amazing. Congratulations. Did you, so I understand you're actually going into production in the new year. Is that right?
That is the plan, if all things go according to plan, fingers crossed. Like, we're still in the financing stage. So we just need a couple more pieces to fall into place. But hopefully in 2022, we will be going to camera. Fingers crossed. Yeah.
That's super exciting.
That's so exciting. Yeah, and I know, so for people who might not be familiar with the production program or even just getting production financing together, we know it can be very tricky to kind of bring other partners on board. So how have you guys gone about that process of filling in the gaps in your budget?
So I think for us, we definitely relied a lot on the experience and expertise of our executive producer in terms of putting together a financing plan that was like realistic and achievable, and also kind of what we need in order to execute on the vision we had. And so they like Authentic and like Lisa, like they really like helped guide us in terms of the other like funds we should be eyeing or like looking towards, and also how to like start like pitching to broadcasters and like platforms in order to get a platform attached, because some of these other funds like do require you to have some sort of like letter of commitment and stuff like that. So that was definitely something we were thinking about. And I know Mark said that like your trailer can be like however long like you want it to be, but there are some other funds that are like, no, your trailer needs to be a specific length, which is why we ended up doing like 2 minutes. So just like thinking about how everything like needs to like interface together before you even like start the process of like serious development, I think can be really useful, because just knowing where all the different pieces of money are going to come from and how they interface together, I think is really helpful.
I'm just excited hearing both of you talk about the journey that you've already been on. I think as fellow new creators, like young creators in terms of like how much experience we have, just hearing your story about you saying like, you know, you went from having totally a budget that was completely absurd to one that's way more realistic. And that's just like, it makes me really excited to hear that, because like, this is the greatest part, I think, about this program and about this process, is that you look back at yourself 6 months earlier and you go, oh my God, I had no idea what I was doing, which is great. But you still you put in the time, you did the work, you learned, and that's super exciting. So, and especially for like first time or early producers like us.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, just before, I know we're transitioning soon to the next segment, but do you guys have any advice for people applying for the IPF for the first time?
Yeah, I'd say my one piece of advice is I'm so grateful that I'm working with like Marushka and Nisha. Like I think finding like collaborators, like co-creators especially, that you know you can work with, because I think just like combining all of your like expertise and like skills and connections and everything like just makes the project like so much stronger versus trying to do it like independently on your own. So that would be my one piece of advice. I know it's not always like realistic, but I do think if you find like great collaborators, like it's priceless. Yeah.
I would like totally second that. And I'd also say that like our lived experiences combined, like Rabs used to be a lawyer, is a lawyer. I used to be an accountant. Nisha like is a brand manager. So like all of those things like really help, like, you know, to just for the practical side of it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, totally.
Okay, Rabiya, I don't know if we're out of time now. Are we out of time?
I think we are.
I think we are.
I was going to say we have to take a commercial break, but when we come back, sorry. Is there a commercial? Oh, look at that. Hannah's saying yes.
Yes.
Here comes the commercial break.
Well, thank you, Lindsay and Justin, so much for like chatting with us about Get Up Aisha. Like, we're so excited to share, you know, just a little bit of insight into the process. But you know what Marushka and I are even more excited for? To talk about Miikshi. Oh, yes.
I mean, you know, this has been awesome. I mean, and we could talk about.
I want to keep this outside. Yeah,
another
super
like hours long. You know, things
Y'all are too kind. But yeah, like we're super excited to learn more about your show, especially now that it's been like released and people can see it. So before we kind of jump into this next part of the two-way interview, why don't we see the amazing trailer?
So this is a clip. Oh, sorry. I talked over the thing. It's a clip. We chose to do a clip instead of the trailer.
Oh, okay. Yes.
It's a clip of the show now because it's out. So there you go.
Goes.
This is Chickalina at ground control. Sending Miikshi's coordinates now.
Got you, Miikshi.
Okay, pull up.
Pulling up.
We're getting close-ish to the lake.
We've done it. A soft landing.
You okay, Miikshi? I wouldn't call that soft, but I'm safe and sound.
Amazing.
Wearing a life jacket. We have to point out she's wearing a life jacket.
TVO approved. Yeah. That was an awesome clip, and I think it's so interesting and refreshing to me to see like a puppet show. I've watched a couple of episodes now, and I think it just like it really like draws you into the world of like Miikshi. And I was wondering if you could just start us off with telling a little bit about like the creative process and how the idea came together.
Yeah, totally. So actually, we applied for the first time to the IPF in 2019 with Miikshi. The program was a little bit different back then. But yeah, we had always, like, I was a really shy kid growing up, and and I think both of us coming from a puppetry background, we felt like, how are we going to blend? Like, we wanted to do a show that blended shy character with all the things we were learning and doing for work with puppets. So yeah, so that's kind of how the initial germ of the idea came about.
And then we put a lab coat on the sheep, and she was a scientist.
Amazing.
She was a scientist. Yeah. Why not?
Awesome. So I know throughout the journey from like inception to production and release, like you have like two different like broadcast partners, like Shaftesbury Kids and like TVO Kids, and I think TVO Kids came on a little bit later. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about what it was like working with these partners, especially with partners that have like strong like educational like mandates, especially.
Yeah.
I guess Shaftesbury came on first as our mentor. So as Lindsay was saying, the IPF program worked a little bit differently before. And so we got production financing. We were awarded production financing to actually make a 10-episode web series. And again, just to be clear, it's not like this currently. It's different now, but that's how it was working before. And we needed to bring an experienced mentor on board, and that was Shaftesbury. So Shaftesbury, obviously, probably best known for Murdoch Mysteries, and they obviously have years of experience. And we were working with Jennifer McCann, the head of kids at Shaftesbury. So there was a lot of kind of knowledge that we were, again, kind of like what you were saying about, there was so much knowledge that you needed to acquire to do to just do this process. And we also, as much as we had experience working with puppets and building sets, and my background is in visual effects, so like I had that kind of post-production side to it, but we didn't have the skill set of like the business side or any of that kind of stuff. So that was where that relationship was very helpful. And then TVO.
Yeah, and at the same time as so the old IPF program was we got production financing to make a digital series. So in our case, it was going to be 10 episodes. So at the same time, we also got Shaftesbury helped us get the show Rocket Fund on children's fund for children's programming. And while we were in development and pre-production, Shaftesbury was also just trying to pitch the Miikshi concept around to different broadcasters, and just to see after the 10 episodes if this would become something, or even if in which case happened, the 10 episodes could be aired on a traditional broadcaster. So that's where TVO came on board. And obviously, as you said, Rabiya, they are specifically children's educational broadcasters. So Miikshi was not always going to be an educational show.
It wasn't designed that way.
No.
And in fact, here's a little trivia. We actually shot some of it before the TVO fully came on board. So there is a version of Miikshi that doesn't have the science in it. And we shot a third of that before we had to. You were talking about ADR. We know exactly what you're talking about, because so much of like certain shots had to be heavily ADR'd. And we were just like, what word can we fit in this puppet's mouth that matches the syllables, to talk about friction or something, because it wasn't like that when we shot it. So that was an interesting trick that happened like pretty late in the process. The other night we just watched that scene that we just showed you guys, but the earlier version of it. And I mean, this is getting a little too into the minutia, but Miikshi is actually in the red jet plane, the Hey You. She's in there with the other two. Like, you can actually see her there because that's how we shot it, but we had to change.
The science was that, you know, you have a softer landing on water than you do on land.
So it was like, it was all like very kind of, so that was an interesting kind of, and I know this happens all the time in film and TV, is, you know, something gets, as you said, you guys, your first and last cut of Aisha was totally different, and actually the first and last cut of our episodes were totally different.
Oh, I love that. Okay, so speaking about that, so I was on the IPF jury, I think in 2019, and I did see Miikshi, the OG, right? The OG player.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's, again, like, how did that change? Because I know it's really expensive to like build these sets and animate and do all of these things. So how did that change from getting the 30 grand in the second year to then, like, you know, the difference between having to do all of that yourself? Because I think IPF required you to make a trailer before you even got any money. So how was that difference like?
I guess, well, we were making like the original kind of pilot of Miikshi. We made a little pilot that did film festival run, and that was a totally self-financed. We did it in the back of a pizza shop. This is totally true. It was a little tiny room, like right behind where our landlord was making pizzas, and sometimes he would cross through the frame doing the delivery. He'd have like the pizza in his hand. He'd be like, sorry, and he'd walk through the camera. So like we have like unused footage where like Miikshi's in the middle of doing something and the pizza guy just walks through the frame. So that's how and it was like impossibly small, the space we were in, but it was like what we could afford. We were paying out of pocket at that point. So I guess
that was before we got IPF funding for a series.
Yeah, I guess that's what you're asking, right, Marushka, is like how, because like you saw that trailer, like that original trailer, that was made up of the pilot stuff that we shot in the pizza shop, and that was very kind of bare bones. We had wasp infestations, we had cockroaches eating part of the props, like we leave. No, it was rats. Yeah, because it was a pizza shop. So like literally we leave something on the floor and then we come back the next day and half of it was gone because they eaten it. So like that's how we started.
And actually, so once we got IPF financing to make the digital series, that's when we could afford to move into a bigger spot, because we definitely could not have made a 10-episode web series in that space.
No,
because we were like, you know, it was just the short film we were doing, so we had a crew of like 5 people, you know, and actually
all
even
standing like this.
Yeah, very.
We actually had to demolish the bathroom to get the wide shot. Like the camera couldn't go far away enough from the set, so we had to knock the bathroom wall down in the pizza shop. Yeah. So.
Oh my god.
But yeah, as you said, like IPF financing allowed us to move to a bigger space, and then obviously working with our mentor Shaftesbury and just kind of learning because it was a much bigger ask to make it. It was making like a feature film.
Yeah, and it was like action adventure elements. So, you know, we were shooting like a bunch of things that we didn't have, obviously, with the short film, that we needed the space for.
No, totally. I think like those stories about like the pizza shop to like once you got the money and now it's like you're building your set. Like I feel you on that. Yeah. It's like doing it yourself versus like with some money.
Basically, money helps.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And speaking about construction and building, like, could you guys talk a little bit more about that? Because they're done so well. And as a noob, I have no idea how you do any of those things. I would love to know.
No, that's really kind of you to say. I mean, we have to give it a huge shout out to our team. We had a really wonderful team, starting with our director of photography, Jeff Mackey. I mean, people always say, anytime we get feedback where they say everything looks so nice, that's so much to do with Jeff and the way he lights and film stuff. But he was also there from almost day one in the pizza shop helping us build sets. He just got excited by the excuse to like take a electric drill and drill screws and so, which was great. So he was having fun, we were having fun. But then of course when we went to do the IPF series proper, we had talented model makers and people who went to school for this stuff. But personally for us, like we were lucky enough to work on a production in England in 2015. I guess it wasn't long before we started thinking about Miikshi, and there were people working on this production who were like industry veterans. Like there was a guy who, unfortunately, our friend who's no longer with us, his first job was working on R2-D2 for Empire Strikes Back. So he was like a really like tenured film dude, and he would show us how to build stuff. And then he kind of gave us the confidence to do it ourselves, which we didn't have before. So he'd be like, here's how you take a drill and whatever. And then he'd hand us the drill. And he was the kind of mentor who just kind of, you'd go, oh, I guess I can do it. You know, he was not condescending. He was always, you know, it's so wonderful in this industry when you meet people like that. You know, some of the people that you probably worked with too, who are just like, let's share this knowledge. Let's like before, you know, pay it forward. So he definitely paid it forward. And that's kind of how, when we came back to Canada, we said, oh, we could probably build a kitchen set or, you know, build a table that flips over or whatever. And that's, and to be clear, we tried to do it without power tools to begin with. And then Jeff Mackey showed up and said, you guys are insane. Yeah, he brought a miter saw and that changed everything. Yeah. There was a process. Just like you guys said, there was a process where like we went from going, we barely know what we're doing to, you know.
Like, oh, look what we made.
Yeah. Speaking of like flipping tables and creating sets with these like practical effects, like my understanding is there's so many like practical effects like in Miikshi. Can you talk a little bit about like the planning process and like the execution process, and maybe a little bit about the decision making that goes behind like doing a practical versus doing something that's more imposed?
Yeah, totally. Well, so our company Gazelle Automations, like that's sort of like what our brand is we work in practical effects and modeling. So, you know, so our edict is, you know, do as much as you can in camera. Justin has a VFX background, so yeah, so that helps. But I think, you know, what we were noticing about, you know, when we were actually in production, all of the stuff we did practically, the energy of the crew just like really
energy on set.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys probably wouldn't want to get up Aisha on a green screen if you can help it.
Yeah.
What would apply to us is like we did end up shooting some of Miikshi on green screen, and that was just by it's a money driven reason, of course, is like how much time do you have to put a setup or things like that. But on the whole, like that scene we just saw where the ships are like one's catching the other in the wing and all that, we did all that with models on wires. Like, so we were holding them and like we just shot it at high speed. So instead of the model kind of wobbling like it's like a little model, it looked like it was big and heavy, and we shoot it on a wide lens. And so like as much as possible, we tried to lean in that direction or have elements. If I had to do VFX compositing, green screen, whatever, if we had filmed elements of stuff we built, you know, we're under no delusion we can do CG as well as like ILM or something. We can't do that.
That's
so
expensive too.
To get really high quality CG, we can probably do low quality CG, which I've done a ton of time. But yeah, like to do that kind of stuff takes a lot of money no matter what. So we were just lucky that because we can play with scale, we can build, you know, nothing has to relate to it. Other things like a jet plane could be this big, Miikshi can be this big.
Right.
The thing she's holding can be a life-size thing that we just cut into it. So it really allows us to manage how much things cost. Like we don't have to build everything at the same scale, which would be. So that's, I guess that's kind of how we did it.
And so like when I watched Miikshi in the credits, I saw that you two also voiced the characters and then also build. Like I would love to know more about that process and, you know, the whole balancing act of doing more than one role, because we just wrote and produced and we already died. So
yeah, I mean, as you guys know as well, I mean, a lot of that is driven by budget. You know? Yes. We could hire separate people.
It's not a vanity project. If you see our name like 50 times in the credits, not because we think we're so great. It's like we couldn't afford any more people. So.
And that's the tough part about making your own thing is like you end up putting in a lot of hours on your own, you know, unpaid hours basically. You know, and we definitely, when we hire people on, you know, I think as Mark was saying too in the intro for the IPF, it's like, you know, you put money aside to pay people to do specific roles, and you know, you don't want to exploit that. You don't want to, you know, if somebody has to leave at 6 o'clock and they're in the middle of building a building, you don't want to be like, finish that, you know. So we just ended up doing you know, a lot of things on our own, and because Justin and I are puppeteers, I had just, you know, it was easier for me to voice and perform Miikshi, you know, and Justin voiced and performed Dr. Crumpet.
For puppeteering, it's kind of the greatest. Usually, the greatest situation is that the performer is like a holistic thing. The whole thing's together, and the character is voiced, physically performed by the same person. I mean, there are many instances where you can't do this, and we have to, like, you know, not just us, but like I know Jim Henson had to do this too. You have to hand puppets off to other people, pre-record dialogue sometimes, ADR. You know, if someone else played the voice on set, but the ideal is that it's all together. But everything was storyboarded on our show, and I guess that kind of speaks to like how we managed, especially during COVID, to do it, because we didn't have time, especially once we lost time to like do the PPE and all that kind of stuff. We didn't have time to kind of invent things on set. We did a little bit, like sometimes if, you know, puppet moved this way or that way, but the angles, the basic blocking, all that stuff, everything had to be boarded first, and then we block shot it. So it was just like, we pointed at the window in her apartment, and then any shot that's pointing at the window for any episode, we just did it in one go, and then we
So we had a lot of crew members who, when they saw the finished episodes, we were like, "Oh, that's what that shot was for." Like bit of this, bit of that, and they were like, "We had no idea."
Put a top hat on him and roll the camera. It's like, what is going on?
Yes.
Just talking a little bit, or Marushka, do you want to go?
Yeah, I just wanted to know. I think Miikshi said in the 80s, 70s. Like it's a little bit of a period piece. Is it? I don't know. Maybe I'm saying shit, but yeah. But I just want to know why that choice. Yeah.
We kind of it does feel like it's not of today, and I think part of that was because we thought if we don't do it of today, it'll never look old because it's already old. That's how we kind of thought about it. So the design is very much inspired by 1960s kind of technicolor-y thing, but then also we were drawing from like Tokyo, like old grungy Japanese, like the buildings kind of look like that. Even like one of the buildings on the skyline is kind of inspired by the Tokyo Tower. And then we also had the farm aspect, so like having hay bales everywhere because they're animals, or subway seats that are upholstered with hay, that kind of thing. So it was just kind of a mishmash.
I love that.
I don't really know. I mean, to really answer your question, why? I'm not really sure why.
I don't know. I mean, we kind of like the 60s aesthetic. Just you know, we just do.
And we got it out of our systems because now the next thing we're doing right now is like very 80s looking. So like we'll eventually catch up. Eventually. Yeah.
I love that. Yeah.
Oh yeah, there's a question in the chat. So in terms of where you can watch Miikshi, you can watch it on Shaftesbury Kids' YouTube channel, correct?
Watch it. So if you're in Canada, there are actually 3 ways to watch it. So tvokids.com/Miikshi.
It's tvokids.com/schoolage/Miikshi. That's the full URL.
Yeah, I don't know if possibly we can share this with the audience afterwards, share the link with them, but you can watch it there. You can watch it on TVO Kids YouTube channel. And yes, Rabiya, you're right, Shaftesbury Kids YouTube channel as well, Canada or international.
That's how, because we've been getting, thankfully, a lot of people watching from overseas. Actually, Miikshi has a Japanese Wikipedia page, which we think is hilarious. We don't know who made it. Very detailed.
They wrote synopses.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
So if you're not in Canada, everyone can watch it on Shaftesbury Kids YouTube. But there's, they said 3 ways to watch the show. Miikshi.com, we have that website as well, www.miikshi.com. That links to Shaftesbury Kids, but then there are also links to TVO on there. So.
And more info about characters, props, behind the scenes photos. Yeah, fun stuff.
Amazing. I think we might be having to wrap up for this session, but we didn't even get to talk about like budget or like launch. So, but next time we will talk about those things. Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Amazing. Thank you guys so much.
Likewise, it was so much fun.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, guys. That I echo the words that you just said. It was an amazing conversation, and I think just tons of insights into the development and production process for both of the series. So we're gonna get to a couple questions from the audience. So I might answer the first one, and then following that, I will pass it to you guys. So there was a question about my presentation slides, if it's available on the website. So the majority of information for my presentation is in our guidelines. You can find it on our site, but I will turn our presentation into a PowerPoint. And if Real World can send it up to the people that subscribed, that would be amazing. I'll also try to just make it more accessible on our website, so people can kind of check it out, like the bullet points at their disposal. So we can definitely make that accessible. There's nothing that's on there that is like hidden information or anything. And so there was a great question about, you have to make a series, but you already have to have made a series in order to apply. I think that is a really good question for how people can get started in this industry. It can absolutely be tough. As I mentioned during the presentation, you do just need 1 credit. So if you shot a proof of concept or a pilot episode in the back of a pizza shop, that would absolutely count and make you eligible for our program. Alternatively, you can lean on people that you know that maybe have had some entrepreneurial spirit, have produced something on their own, have just been driven. And if they're right for your project, whether on the producing or writing side, and you want to team up with them, and you personally don't have experience, that is possible as well. We basically just want to know that you've been through at least 1 step of the process. It's not that we want to shut you out in giving you this opportunity, but even in the development phase, $30,000 is quite a lot of money for development, and it's also a ton of work. As that kind of been elaborated in this session, sometimes it can be a rush till the end. And so we want to know that you've at least had a little bit of experience, even if it was just on your own and you shot with friends, that you have made something and learned something. Because it's hard for us to feel confident that you'll be able to use the funds wisely, that you'll be able to leverage connections, and that you'll be able to make the trailer and write the scripts, because it is so difficult, even for established creators. So that is why there's a little bit of a barrier there. And I do understand it absolutely is a barrier, but hopefully, you can create something on your own, and in your application, you can also hyperlink to it. So you can show the evaluators what you've created in the past, to portray something honestly. And I think, a lot of the concerns as well about, how do you make connections? How do you network? How do you get into it? If you need a mentor, how does that work? Even if there's money to pay them, how do you make those connections? And I agree, it is absolutely tough. In the past, what I've told people when they've asked this question is, sometimes look at the projects that the IPF has funded in the past. Look at the creators and see if you can get into contact with them. And there's actually been some success stories where people apply and they're like, I don't know what a mentor would be for my program. And I recommend watching the shows that we funded in the past, and maybe reaching out to the creators, the producers, the writers, and seeing if they're available to put their name on it, help you. And if it's a right project. So there actually has been real world experience of that happening, and that being a successful storyline. So I hope those are kind of helpful tips, but I do recognize the barrier.
I just want to echo Mark, that I am really willing to help read. So reach out.
Us as well.
Yeah.
Ditto. Yeah.
That paid forward thing, and so many people have done that for us. That
previous recipients have said, here are my best practices or tips and tricks we're applying. So yeah, absolutely.
Same.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. Yeah. And then, so I guess I'll kick it off with Lindsay and Justin, because you came through our program in its previous stage, as you mentioned, when it was just production financing. You had to shoot a trailer to apply to us, which was a different barrier all in of itself. But I'll start with you guys, and then I'll move on to the Get Up Aisha team of collaborating with the IPF. Even though I'm here, feel free to be as honest positively and negatively of the experience, because we learn actually more from the negative feedback that we get. If it's a really tight timeline to develop, what the problems you face were, how we were responsively. We learn from that and hopefully make the programs better in the future. So Lindsay and Justin.
Yeah, no, I think we can actually, we're in a unique position to speak to both IPF programs because we actually received development financing from the IPF this year for a different project. So talking about actually Miikshi under the old program, I think the huge thing we said that we really appreciated about the IPF was just giving new creators a chance to do something original. You know, a lot of, I think we were saying before, a lot of funds, you know, you need to have, the criteria is a lot more restrictive, I think, with the type of content or, you know, even the creative. And, you know, I felt like when we applied to the IPF, it was like, any idea, take any idea you have and just show us what you can do. And like, that was like our biggest pro for the IPF.
And actually, when we had our first meeting it was Andrea and you, Mark, it was, Andrea's not there anymore, but she was the chair, right, and she was so supportive of what we were doing, and she was so adamant that it was our vision, especially as we had a big company like Shaftesbury mentoring us. She was very, she wanted to be very careful that we were still the ones who were kind of leading the project. And so actually our experience, especially for that earlier program, was that you guys gave us a lot of support, and we were very grateful for that. In terms of timelines and that sort of thing, like, I think it was all manageable. I would say that our kind of entry into working with the IPF in the first place came through the fact that we were already starting to talk with Shaftesbury. Like, that happened first. Like, we knew about the IPF. In fact, one of our friends had previously had a project financed through the IPF, and he was telling us we should do it. We said we're not ready right now. We don't have enough stuff. You know, we don't. And then when we started to talk to Shaftesbury, they suggested again that we apply for it. So it was kind of we needed that kind of step, that relationship, and that information in order to kind of be ready for the IPF for us anyway.
And I would say, because under the new program that we just applied for this year, so we went through the development process, and again, you know, it's the same as I said before. We were just so happy to have the opportunity to make something, you know, this idea that we had, even just to develop it a bit more. Which under the old program there was no separate fund for development. I think where, and I mentioned this to Carly as well, because the production deadline came like right after the development deadline, and we didn't this year have enough time sort of to get ready to submit a production application. Like, we didn't, you know, feel like we had enough, like broadcaster or, you know, other financiers on board. So we didn't actually apply for production this year, but what we do have now is a development package that we are now in the month of October taking around and shopping around to different people. So, I mean, it definitely, whether or not, you know, we applied for IPF production financing, we have tools now that we can use to apply for production financing in general.
And excitingly, again, we're grateful for the IPF because this is our first, like the one we're working on right now, the Shapeshifters, it's our first like solo production. Miikshi was with Shaftesbury. This is the first one we're doing by ourselves.
As with our own company.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're really excited about that. Yeah. So thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm glad it was good, and that's so interesting that you've had both processes, both sets of programs to comment on. Yeah, so thank you. Yeah, thank you. I'm glad it was a good experience. And I do remember that meeting, the first meeting we had. Yeah.
That was like 3 years ago.
I know.
I think it was 3 years ago. Yeah.
And Marushka and Rabiya, do you want to talk about the process of working with us?
Yeah, for sure. Or Marushka, go. No, okay. Yeah, I feel like for working with IPF has been like really like easy going, like straightforward for us. We were lucky that our executive producer was previously like working within the like funding system, so I think she had a lot of like insights to share with us. So it was pretty like smooth sailing. I think. For me personally, I thought the development timeline like worked. I think the only thing that I would love was if there could be more money for development, you know, just a little bit more, but I feel like maybe everyone says that. Yeah. What about you, Marushka?
I would agree. I think that Carly was great and like really got back to us promptly on time. Like whenever we needed information on anything or anything, she basically got back to us within a day, and it was great. It was very, very, very easy to work with.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's great. And I do have a question. It was an amazing point that you made earlier about my presentation, and I talked about the length of the trailer. And I did say, you can use the funds to create any length. You can create multiple trailers, but for the purposes of other funds, they have specific guidelines and requirements of how long a trailer can be. And I think that is such valuable information. Maybe like in that development process that you're thinking about potential financing partners moving forward and what their requirements are. And so getting an understanding of the landscape is such a good idea. And I guess having a mentor and doing research on your own was kind of the way in which you found out about that. But there's a question from the audience that says, that asks, what is one or several lessons or insights you know now that you wish you knew at the beginning of developing your project with the IPF? If there's anything. So maybe, Marushka, I can start with you.
For me personally, like I wish I knew there's so much like not creative stuff that you need to be doing that, that just take up time. Right. And I think that like before you enter the process is you need to be mindful of that while it is like, you are getting to create your own show, that comes with a lot of baggage in the terms of like the business aspect, and it can be a little bit overwhelming. So that's what I'd say.
Yeah, I'd totally agree with that. And I think kind of part and parcel with that is also thinking about like what is realistic in terms of the time, energy, and effort you can like devote to it. Because like, yeah, 30K sounds like a lot of money, but it's not like quit your job money, And so like being realistic about how much time and effort you can put in, and like how much money you might need to pay yourself from the development money to make sure that you're able to like, like live and like pay your bills and like put food on the table. Because I think there sometimes can be this mentality of like, oh, like I don't need to pay myself, like I'll pay everyone else except for myself. But I think it's really important that like, you are taking care of yourself and like making sure that you can like, put food on the table.
What Rabiya just said, exactly right.
100%.
Pay yourself. No, it's important. It is very important. And I think just like you said about not being able to quit your job, I was still working freelancing in my other job, which was doing visual effects work. So that was how we were able to kind of keep paying our bills and stuff. Because you're right, like it sounds like a lot of money, and it is a lot of money, and we're certainly very grateful for the funding. And you have to be cognizant of how far that will get you, how much things cost. You bring people on board. Everyone needs to be compensated properly. And yes, as you said, pay yourself. It's important.
I would also say just also thinking long term as well. So thinking past the development phase, like how are decisions that you're making budget wise or time wise going to affect production? Just to keep in mind, because I think sometimes like when you're making a demo, certainly with us, like we get tunnel vision, right? Like we just need to make this as good as possible, and then you're like, oh no, like we haven't thought about what's going to happen next, like the different funds we can apply for and stuff like that. So just keeping that perspective.
Great. So I think we have one more audience question, but I have a question of my own. But thank you for sharing all of the lesson learned. I think those are hugely helpful for people just starting their applications and getting going on that, and having this information up front that you didn't have is paying it forward, like Justin was saying. So Marushka, I really want to know about, I actually didn't know that you were an evaluator a couple of years ago. And so so many of the questions we receive are, who's looking at our projects? What are they looking for? And so you having an evaluation experience, I would love to know how that was, and maybe what you looked for specifically as an evaluator. I know we give you guidance kind of and a template to fill out, but was there anything that you were looking for specifically as an evaluator? And just sharing that insight might be helpful to people.
Sure. Like I think the addition of the vision statement that you guys have added this year, I think was what I was looking for in those evaluations as well, as why is this project something that we need to watch now, regardless of my own like tastes and preferences, like if the concept was really strong and also meant for digital, because I think there are some ideas that while are amazing are better suited to be more longer form series than short form. So I think it was a combination of those things, like voice and like vision, and this being the right medium.
That's awesome. Thank you. And so the final question, maybe we can close out. Lindsay and Justin, you've already talked about how people can watch Miikshi, and I think Hannah is going to post that in the chat so people can check it out. But in terms of Get Up Aisha, or just any other projects that you currently have going on or have done in the past, maybe people are like, what did you start out with? Is anything available online of like, what did I do on my own money? It would be great to share that. And I think it's so exciting that Nisha couldn't be here today because she's working on Murdoch Mysteries and is, you know, directing her own show and her own episode, sorry. And that is super exciting success story as well. So yeah, if you guys want to close out with that, and then we'll pass it back to Hannah to close us out. So yeah,
yeah. So for Get Up Aisha, we have a dedicated Instagram account, which is at Get Up Aisha. Super easy to remember. In terms of some other projects I'm working on, I'm currently working on another web series. We're kind of in development right now called Layla is Relevant, and you can find us on Instagram at Layla is Relevant. And I'm on Instagram at Rabiya Mansoor. I'll throw it over to Marushka.
I'm not doing as much as Rabiya for sure. I'm working on this amazing show called Revenge of the Black Best Friend that's coming out on CBC Gem early next year. So watch it there.
Nice. And for us, you can find us at our company is called Gazelle Automations. So
like the animal
and
automation.
We have the project we mentioned that we were developing with the IPF. We have that ongoing. We have a show in development with the CBC Kids called Power Lines.
Our website, www.gazelleautomations.com.
You can contact us.
If you like puppets, models, practical filmmaking, mostly of the tiniest size.
Gazelle.
Yeah. There are no gazelles in our shows.
Not a lot of automation. Anyway.
All right, awesome. So thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to hear your gems of wisdom and your insight with your development process and just what motivated and inspired you to share your stories. Thank you, Rabiya, Lindsay, Justin, Marushka, Mark, and for just facilitating this conversation and just sharing your stories. It's very insightful and informative. For more panel discussions, our viewers, we want to thank you for watching today's session. For more panel discussions such as this, please go to www.realworld.ca. You can obtain a festival pass at realworld.ca/2021 festival pass to obtain an all-access digital pass, as well as mark your calendars. We're having in-person screenings on October 24th and the 25th at the Paradise Theater. Thank you so much for joining us, and have a wonderful day.